Let's Talk Local. My name is Stefan Fried, and this time we're not in one of our studio locations, but here in the heart of the brand. In Karlsfeld at the Bodystreet headquarters, just outside Munich. Normally we talk here about what's happening locally in the studios, what moves the teams, and what our members really experience. That's what it's all about, listening. Listening to our studio teams, our franchise partners, our members, but also to everyone who is just getting to know Bodystreet or maybe wants to become part of the Bodystreet family someday. I'm very pleased that today we have a guest here who not only founded Bodystreet, no, he has shaped it to this day, simply, and it's just amazing that he took the time to sit down here with me in front of the microphone. Matthias H. Lehner to the A. We'll get to that later, I promise. Founder and CEO of Bodystreet. And perhaps one more brief but important point to make beforehand. This episode will actually be available in English for the first time. At Bodystreet, it's not just local, not just German, not just the DACH region, but also international and global. Matthias, it's great to have you here and welcome to the Broadcasting Center of Bodystreet. Dear listeners, that's simply what we call our TV and podcast studio here at the global headquarters in Munich. Today, we're sitting in the place where many decisions are made that later reach hundreds of Bodystreet studios around the world and in many cases are rightly implemented. And I'd like to start with something personal right away. Dear Matthias, because Bodystreet is always something personal as well. It's not just about numbers, data, facts, or business. It's about people. Bodystreet, it's about a people's business. And so my first question for you right away. Matthias, if you think back to the very beginning in your mind, what was the moment when an idea actually became Bodystreet?
Yes, hello, dear listeners. Well, of course, I've been asked that question. I've been asked that quite a few times before. Over the past almost 20 years, and actually Bodystreet wasn't invented, Bodystreet just happened. That was Christmas 2006. Yes, my wife and I, we were in the fitness industry. We had two of our own fitness studios under the brand name Municals. They were very successful, but we were really dissatisfied with the status quo in our industry. People sign up for a gym membership, then they go a few times, stand in front of the mirror, and either see hardly any results or no results at all. And eventually they end up as inactive members. And on July 1st, 2007, that was the moment at Münchner Freiheit. The first Bodystreet, and it truly offered real benefits for the members, namely, why train a lot when 20 minutes of training is enough? And now, really looking back to that time, the promise of 20 minutes of training. The topic of health was already becoming apparent back then, as was the demographic trend. People in society are living longer and longer. And the topic of franchising, becoming self-employed, with a strong brand behind you, that was the moment when you could already sense this is going to be something. Then there was also a studio design that didn't resemble a fitness studio at all. We were the thorn in the side of the fitness industry, absolutely. And yes, there was no master plan. There was just this idea, this desire that things out there had to be done better. So we started to do things better. And today it has actually become a real mission to create joy in life. Joy in life for members who can achieve a lot with little time, feel better, look better, perform better at work, and have more energy for their families on the weekend. Joy in life, but also for employees, a good education, a great job with many, many opportunities in the health sector, and joy in life for franchise partners who can fully focus on their employees and their members, because they simply have a franchise headquarters that takes care of a lot of work in the background. Yes, that was the beginning, and I actually look back on it very fondly.
The good man can't stop grinning. You can really see the stars in his eyes again. Matthias, I'd like to briefly follow up on that. When did you realize that this wasn't just an idea, not just a studio concept, but that it really had the potential to become something big? Or even really, really big? What was perhaps the decisive moment, or was it more of a process?
Well, first of all, one thing needs to be made very clear again. Bodystreet, the name. A lot of people ask, how did the name actually come about? And it was actually a fashion boutique. Back then, we even had a slogan, what's the difference between a boutique and a fitness studio? Sometimes there's none at all, Bodystreet, because 20 minutes of training is enough. And then, with that, there were also many details in the studio. There are many countless EMS studios all over the world. Often, when you talk to the owners and ask, why do you have curtains in the changing rooms instead of doors? They don't even know. Why exactly is the training 20 minutes and not 30, 60, 45, or 90? They don't even know. Back then, we really developed all of this very, very deeply based on the needs of our customers. And it should also be said that by our third year of franchising, we already had 200 locations. Of course, at that time, they opened primarily in German-speaking regions, Germany, Austria, and also the first location in Switzerland. And back then, it was clear that this was going to be something really, really great, something amazing.
Awesome. Now, since the end of last year, we've really been focusing on the topic of original. In our brand positioning, we deliberately refer to Bodystreet as the original, as a brand claim, but also as a statement, as a message to the outside world. What does this term mean for our franchise partners and their employees today? And in your opinion, what needs to be done to maintain this status and truly bring it to life within yourself?
That's a damn good question, Stefan. You are not the original just because you assert that status for yourself. Truly being the authentic original means that at some specific point, others find it absolutely impossible to replicate your work or copy you anymore. And there's a lot behind that. It's not just the brand that's protected, but also the entire, as they say, corporate culture, the values, the behavior, the commitment to quality. It's about how you stand together, just like a soccer team on the field. And you fight for the cause, proud to wear that jersey. This is very important for the franchise partners, for the employees, for the members. First of all, being the original means being proud of it. So being proud to say, hey, we were the first ones here. Secondly, what we have to do, well, to truly be original and to be the original also means to consistently over a long period of time and eventually almost automatically become the ultimate point of reference for everyone else. That is to say, it means establishing the definitive gold standards in this entire industry. And yes, of course, how do you become that and how do you stay that way? Through quality standards, through services that logically build on each other, not just training, but also supplementary offerings to the training. A relaxation offering, let's call it EMS massage or EMS outdoors, an outdoor EMS workout, or even immersing yourself in another world with virtual reality goggles and doing EMS there. The topic of nutrition, nutritional coaching, we have a course for that. Online, we want our members to understand how it works. Also, of course, the topic of measurement and analysis. How far have you come with your training results? And then keep adjusting. Training, nutrition, analysis, adjustment. And that leads to not only achieving this position, but also maintaining it. And that takes a hell of a lot of work behind the scenes. When it comes to the training and further education of employees and franchise partners, but also in fact enabling members because they also need to be empowered to reach the next level.
Super cool. As you've noticed, it's about more than just 20 minutes. It's about many, many other modules that Bodystreet offers and that are also provided as needed. Now, to put it modestly, Bodystreet is one of the best known franchise systems or EMS franchise systems or most successful systems. Truly recognized as well. And recognized not just by people giving a pat on the back, but also officially recognized just last year, Bodystreet was awarded as the best franchise system in Austria. There was the Global Franchise Award in 2020 and also in 2022. And in addition, especially in the early days, Bodystreet was already recognized in 2016, as in very, very early on, as the best franchise system in Germany. Of course, that's also a pat on the back, you could say. Yes, great. But how important are such awards to you? Confirmation, cool, we're on an important path. There is a sense of responsibility and burden to say we are on the right track, but we must keep moving forward.
Yes, both. So pride and responsibility, both are part of it. Such awards, that's not the goal. Our goal isn't to wake up every morning thinking, okay, when will we get the next award? Rather, these awards are Strictly speaking, yes, an echo. That essentially means there are many people out there who would say, you have definitely gone in the right direction. And that makes you incredibly proud. Our employees, the franchise partners. On the other hand, of course, it's a huge responsibility. So you bring home a trophy, a cup, whether it's from Berlin or Las Vegas. We have also already received awards as a top employer in the USA. Also in the United Kingdom, we've already received awards as a top employer. And when you come home with such a trophy, you're happy, you're incredibly proud. And from the moment you put it in the display case, you say, damn it, that also comes with responsibility. So you have to deliver as well. And that's why such an award always has the function that, of course, with our business model, with the support and everything behind it, we always have to make sure we reach the next level. So it's a continuous process of further development. And as I said at the beginning, always with the customer in focus. Always considering, hey, what actually makes sense from the customer's perspective. Because if the customer likes it, if it benefits the customer, then usually the employees also enjoy it because they receive positive feedback. When the employees are having fun, the customers notice it. And of course, the franchisee notices it too, because to put it simply, their business runs quite well.
Speaking of running, well, we're talking about business here, and we're also talking about people's business. And now, Matthias, come on, let's talk about a really humorous and personal story. I introduced you earlier as Matthias H. Lehner. Now let's go in a completely different direction because I probably hear this question quite often. Or maybe you can hear them too. Matthias H. Lehner, many people are wondering what the H actually stands for. You always emphasize it, and it's also in your signature. And if I'm correctly informed, the answer is Howard. Could you maybe tell us, or our listeners, the story behind it? And maybe also how much internationality already played a certain role early in your life?
So apparently my name already had American influence. At a time when I had no idea that I would one day run an international company. Lead? No, but all joking aside, there are of course many blissful examples on Facebook and in groups. Matthias Lehner. The name Lehner is actually very, very common here in Lower Bavaria and Upper Austria. And Matthias is also a very typical German name. And then I added the hair in between because it simply makes a certain distinction. I'm not just anybody, I'm Matthias Lehner. But now, seriously, all joking aside, I honestly think my parents already set me off quite early on as a bit of a global project. No, I was actually born in the city of Frankfurt and grew up there during the mid-60s. Right in the mid-60s period. The 70s, which of course was also influenced by the American Armed Forces. Frankfurt, a hub because of the airport. And yes, my Uncle Howard from Allentown, Pennsylvania, who was my godfather back then, is the one who gave me this hair, this Howard. And oh my goodness, look at that. That's what truly distinguishes Matthias Lehner from every single one of the other Matthias Lehners currently out there.
Perfect. Thank you for this really cool and humorous anecdote. Let's get back to business now. So, when we look at Bodystreet today, we are, of course, present in many markets that I would say were to be expected. In the German-speaking region, we are in Italy, Luxembourg. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, in the famous United Kingdom, in Great Britain. That's all somewhat predictable. But now, I think things are about to get really exciting because there are regions in the world, including Singapore, then Florida, and also around Kilimanjaro, where there are Bodystreet locations. What was the decisive moment, dear Matthias, when Bodystreet stopped just expanding and started to truly think globally? And the follow-up question is, how do you manage to maintain and implement a consistent Bodystreet DNA in such different cultures?
Okay, good. So first of all, how did internationalization come about? And then later, how we maintain this consistency there. Germany was the starting point, okay. But our mindset was never limited to just the national level. It already starts with the name Bodystreet, two terms that actually sound almost like a contradiction. And we deliberately chose the brand name Bodystreet and not EMS, Oasis or Body Culture. Why? Because it also works effectively on an international scale. And we really took the time to look at, well, I mean, if you take famous examples like Starbucks, which everyone knows, or others like Red Bull and Netflix, these are brands that truly resonate globally. They work with a similar principle, meaning the brand was set up from the very beginning with this two-part name for international functional use. And how did we become international? Well, to be honest, at some point someone just approaches you. I remember in 2016, Mark Holland, a franchise expert, a franchise consultant from the north of London, so between Milton Keynes and Birmingham, and he said, Matthias, I would love to use this brand to grow the brand in the United Kingdom. And I said, okay. And yes, he is exactly the right candidate. He is still doing it very successfully today. He has great franchisees, whether it's Edai or Roger or The Hash, really wonderful people, and of course, many more. And that's exactly how it works in Singapore. Alistair, a great partner, set up the first location because you have to pilot and adapt things at first. In Tanzania, it's Titus and Jane. In Florida, it's David, Amy, and Stefan. These are truly wonderful, wonderful people. They're doing an amazing job. The second question is, how do you achieve this level of internationality? So Singapore, Florida, Kilimanjaro, those aren't really markets, to be honest. In the usual sense, they're different sets of rules. And yet we play our game everywhere. And what do I mean by that? The vision of Bodystreet is truly powerful. We want our members along their customer journey at every touch point. So everywhere they interact with the brand, with employees, with the website, with social media, everywhere they come into contact with Bodystreet, to simply have a great customer experience, a great brand experience. And when these brand experiences are strung together and run harmoniously, because nowadays you have so many digital touch points as well, when everything is truly harmonious, from the first phone call to the walk-in, to the first training session, to the website, and so on, then we call that ambient customer experience. And this vision is called a vision for a reason, because it's not so easy to achieve at all these many touch points. But this vision, we have it in all the countries where Bodystreet is present, and we have values. We have values. We call them Richie, it's 5 letters, and these values, they have a power. So for respect, respect for the brand, respect for what I do there, respect for my member, for their training goals, integrity. So I am authentic, I stand for that. That means if I am a personal trainer, then I truly live it. The C stands for customer focus. Everything we do revolves around, hey, what is good for the customer? That's how Bodystreet came about. We wanted to do it better, and that's how it remains. And the last 2 letters, the H, have fun. Because, in the service industry, you have to approach things with fun. The members feel that too, and that's really important. Also at our CHISI meetings, our partner meetings, of course, we always include elements so that it doesn't become a boring conference. There's always fun involved. That's what Bodystreet is like. And finally, there's the why. That shapes an entire young generation. They're also called Generation Y. So why am I actually doing this? Why do I get up every morning and do this? I'm not just doing it because I want to get rich somehow, but because I'm genuinely excited about this mission of spreading joy for life. I do it because I'm proud to be working for the original. And when we, meaning partners, franchise partners, international representatives, we call them master franchisees, when we implement this, you end up with such a consistent brand presence. And that's true no matter the culture. And I honestly find it incredible how well that works. In theory, I would have imagined it to be much more difficult, to be honest. Yeah.
Totally. Now we always talk about the Bodystreet family. You're talking about the Bodystreet family. Now let's really get to the family, Matthias. Let's talk about Emma Lehner, your wife and one of the most influential personalities in the system. Her name sounds very German, I think. Emma Lehner. But their story is not German at all. It's super international. She originally comes from Tanzania and was part of the national heptathlon team there. And today, she is making a big impact not only in sports and in the franchise context, but also on the level of economic policy. Yes, she is vice president in the Senate of the Economy. And you yourself, it has to be said, here, president of the European Franchise Association, European Franchise Federation. If you look at these 2 roles together, economy, franchise, international development, what does that actually mean for Bodystreet in everyday life?
So it is incredibly important to realize that these are not just simple titles hanging on the wall. Rather, they represent vital perspectives waiting right at the door. So, to put it a bit differently, again, we see it like this. Emma, Vice President in the Senate of the Economy, that's not just a position. The Senate of the Economy stands for business and people, meaning the three pillars of sustainability. The company must be successful, economically speaking, but without harming the environment. And also the social aspect, so supporting people. Not just supporting, but also challenging them. So to support and challenge the Austrians as well. And that's actually what the Senate of the Economy is about. That's what it always stands for, and you can transfer that one-to-one to Bodystreet and to the European franchise as well. The umbrella organization, the European Franchise Federation, based in Brussels, is the umbrella association of all European franchise associations. Here too, it's very important. Of course, it's close to our hearts that as an internationally oriented franchisor, you don't face any obstacles if you want to expand your franchise system into a neighboring country. And the European Franchise Federation plays a very important role in this as well. And also the individual national associations, meaning our members. So once again, we see this as a very, very big responsibility. And to be honest, by doing this, we are also opening doors really, really wide for others.
A follow-up question on that, Gurnishan. How does it change your perspective on entrepreneurship when you are suddenly not just an entrepreneur, but also a part, or perhaps even a board member of such international bodies?
Well, when it comes to franchising, if you happen to Google it, or perhaps ask an AI about it, it's often franchising is typically presented as a very structured and proven business model. To me, that's far too clinical and dry, because a franchise system is always a dynamic combination of a strong brand and a culture. That is, the identity of the brand and the unique spirit of the people. You put it so beautifully and nicely in your introduction as well. So that means franchising is an economic system, and we actively help shape it. By we, I mean us people. My wife Emma, she knows what it means to train hard as a former professional track and field athlete. A meticulous work. As a trained physiotherapist, she could tell you a thing or two about that as well. And today, as an entrepreneurial couple, so we actively help shape this. We don't see ourselves as spectators in the franchise industry. Instead, we are part of this group of architects. And of course, our franchisees benefit from this as well because we naturally serve as role models. And we also try, as far as we can, to run our own franchise system in an exemplary manner. And as I said, everyone benefits from that. And you really have to say, we also have an excellent reputation in the countries where Bodystreet operates, especially in our home market of Germany. We have franchising. An excellent reputation, and people know us personally and also find us likable. We are authentic, and that really makes it fun too.
Super. Perhaps the last question on this point. How has this changed your or your company's thinking about responsibility in franchising? Perhaps even beyond Bodystreet, if one sits on such committees or even chairs them?
Yes, well, you have to imagine all the topics we have today, digitalization. Then the topic, how do you automate it? Processes. The topic also includes simplification processes, i.e. simplification and communication. All these tasks that you have today in a system, you also have in an international system. Suddenly you have two languages. And if I now say German and Austrian, German is again a slightly different kind of German. Then we actually have three languages, and with Luxembourg, there's also French included, 4 languages. And I mean, how does that change things? I simply think that you look at things even more closely and in greater depth. So really focusing on what brings value to employees, what brings value to members, what brings value to franchise partners. And anything where you say you could do it, but it doesn't bring any benefit, you also set aside. Prioritization. And secondly, always thinking internationally as well. So never just locally, what advantage do we have here in Bavaria, or in Upper Bavaria, or in the north of Munich? But of course, always also the question, how will this be received later in the USA? Hey, how can the Brits implement this? What does this look like in Singapore? And also in markets that might still be developed, like France, a target market, or Scandinavia, Sweden, for example. Finland, Norway, those are markets where Bodystreet is a perfect fit. And of course, you start thinking much more broadly and always consider, how could this work in those markets later on?
Perfect. Now let's come back. Let's stay with franchising and also touch a bit on the interest in franchising. At Bodystreet, you quite confidently call what others refer to as the Franchise Discovery Day, the Bodystreet Independence Day, I have to say. That sounds pretty bold at first. Definitely a statement, Independence Day. What does this day mean for someone who wants to become a franchise partner, who is considering it, who is interested? What does it really mean for their everyday life?
Yes, calling it Independence Day is, of course, an interesting play on words, no doubt about it. The Independence Day, so our Franchise Discovery Day or our open house here at headquarters, is, strictly speaking, the specific moment in time when an interested person transforms into a professional entrepreneur. I truly desire to become my own boss. That is exactly how younger generations frequently choose to express it. But it is also the case for many other people who have already passed the peak of their careers as employed managers. Sometimes it's also people who are retiring but simply don't feel old enough yet. And I just have to say, I smile about it, that's why. I always have the faces in my mind. Yes, a laundromat owner named Lehner from Hanover, who is called Rückenreiner by his members. He actually wanted to retire, but he said, no, I want to do something. He is a really great, modern, young at heart franchise partner, but also a very young franchisee. So young people at the age of 20 say, I want to become self-employed in the fitness industry. And very often, but also completely career changes, former professional footballers. We had a franchisee who unfortunately has now also retired, who was a stunt woman. Teachers, sports teachers. I can picture Thomas right now, Stefan in Orlando, Apple manager. So for all kinds of people, and as I said, this Independence Day means you stop being an employee now and start taking on responsibility as an independent entrepreneur. And so that you can carry this burden, you have a central office that takes a lot of work off your hands, whether it's marketing, finance, architecture, purchasing, products, training, and so on. And then get started with your identity shift from employee to entrepreneur. Freedom, structure, responsibility.
Yes. Now, regarding this day again, Matthias, from your perspective, what should he or she really have understood before actually taking this step, or goes forward with full determination? What are, for you, the essential points where it really has to click so that you can say, okay, this fits?
Yes, well, as an entrepreneur, you really have to be willing to dedicate time to employees, to hire, select, and lead them. That is definitely a challenge here and there, but it's fun. Of course, you also have to be willing to constantly ensure that the quality in the studio is maintained. Members want a clean studio, members want competent staff, but members also want people who enjoy their work. And that's the responsibility you take on as a leader. And with that in mind, you can also create a truly unique selling point, because the remarkable success you achieve with a Bodystreet studio, this specific kind of success, is something that simply can't be bought. But you can learn it. Specifically, how do I ideally handle things so that my employees deliver top performance? It's like a soccer coach training a team to win the championship. And the second thing is, how do I get my members to simply have fun so that they are happy to recommend us to others? And you have to be willing to embrace that and honestly say, I really want to do this. It's challenging, but I want to do it. And then everything else can be learned. And that's exactly what we already practice at hundreds of locations across several continents.
Perfect. Now we're sitting here at headquarters, so we're really here in person, but Bodystreet is already happening everywhere at the same time, simultaneously. How important is this place today compared to what happens digitally, for example, through the Knowledge Center or teams worldwide? And as a follow-up question, which is more important to you? That knowledge exists or that it is actually put into practice?
The second question is a no-brainer. Of course, knowing is one thing, but being able to do it is another. Knowledge has to be lived. We don't have any know-how that requires you to have studied rocket science. It has to be put into practice. The customer has to feel it, period. But here at the franchise headquarters, well, we produce, but here, it's not just knowledge. Honestly, what we do is much more about organizing impact. Something really happens here. That means here at headquarters, this isn't the place where everything happens, but rather the place where everything comes together so that things can actually happen out there. And of course, we have digital platforms like our Knowledge Center, our Teams platform, where partners and employees can exchange ideas, where people share their experiences with each other. That all happens here. And as I said, also this, in the end, this global scaling and this constant further development. In other words, this ongoing innovation.
So Matthias, now we need to pick up the pace a bit here. Earlier, you talked a lot about impact. So we're slowly coming to the end, even though you probably, and I as well, could listen to you for a lifetime, probably for a lifetime. So if you had to explain Bodystreet and its impact to someone today, really in just one sentence, someone who has never heard of us, who doesn't know the podcast at all, what would that sentence be? One sentence.
Oh God, I almost wanted to say the original, but that's not a sentence. Well, you could say that. Bodystreet is essentially the ideal place where people transform themselves and become stronger. So I would say physically, because they train, professionally, because they receive excellent training and service where you learn empathy. And at Bodystreet, you learn everything you need in a company, period. And finally, of course, mentally as well. Especially this entrepreneurial personality, since our franchise partners are franchise entrepreneurs and become personalities. So to sum it up, Bodystreet is the place where people become stronger. You could probably leave it at that.
A perfect sentence. Now, really to wrap things up, in your opinion, from your perspective, why is it more worthwhile than ever to talk about Bodystreet today? Whether as a member, as an employee, or maybe even as a future partner.
Well, because good ideas don't grow if you somehow keep them hidden. Well, no, if something really works well. And Bodystreet really works well. As a workout, as a business, as a training program, then remaining completely silent and keeping quiet would be a highly ineffective and counterproductive marketing strategy. We don't need to run complex persuasion campaigns. In fact, what we truly need are people. And ideally, we would have a much larger number of them who are genuinely eager to see tangible results and real progress, who are open to it. And by that, I mean welcome. Dear members at Bodystreet, welcome. Dear employees at Bodystreet, whether you're in training, a dual study program, or working professionally. And of course, welcome to our franchisees, whether you're from this industry, superstars, professional footballers, personal trainers, physiotherapists, or even career changers who are simply excited to join.
But I won't let you go without one more question. This is our famous closing question. Matthias, think of a person within the Bodystreet franchise system, whether nationally or internationally, where you would say, Stefan, if you ever get this person in front of your microphone, I would be one of the very first to listen to that podcast episode from start to finish, taking notes, thinking, wow, this is truly inspiring for me. This opens up a whole new horizon. So, in your opinion, Matthias, who should I invite to my mini studio and get in front of the microphone?
Well, I actually have a business partner in the UK as well. Mark Holland, he would be one for the show. He would be a fantastic conversation partner. Then we would record this podcast in English and then translate it back into German. But Mark Holland is truly someone who impresses me greatly with his professional experience, his life experience, but above all, with his business ethics. I would really like to have him here at the microphone.
All right, noted. Thank you, dear Matthias, for this insight not only into the brand, but also into the story and the beginnings behind it. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with your team, in the studio, or with people who might be thinking about their next step right now. Because that's exactly what Let's Talk Local is made for. For conversations, for entertainment that go beyond just the studio tour, With that in mind, my final word is always stay sporty. Welcome to Bodystreet. Welcome to the original, or also the originals. Take care. Ciao, ciao.